My name is Anna Barnes, and I'm 34 years old. At my father's funeral, held in the Grand Meridian Ballroom, the crystal chandelier sparkled over 380 guests. Meanwhile, my stepmother, Patricia, turned my grief into a stage show. She yanked hard on my worn-out black dress and sneered, "You're nothing but the help. Once this funeral is over, get out." I stayed silent, not because I couldn't dismantle her with the truth, but because I refused to turn my father's farewell into her circus. What Patricia didn't know was that she and my perfect golden child stepsister, Victoria, were clutching a forged will, counting down 72 hours until they wiped me from the family entirely. But once those sympathy flowers wilted, they were going to learn exactly who really needed to leave that house. The cruelest part? My father had anticipated every move they would make, so before I tell you the trap he set, you need to see the basement I called home. It was 180 square feet, 4 concrete walls, and the smell of regret. There was one tiny window, high up, facing the garage where Patricia parked her Range Rover. She told guests I preferred that intimate space. The truth? She moved me there just 1 week after she married my father 12 years ago. She claimed my second-floor bedroom was better suited for Victoria's home gym. I didn't fight back. I was 22, fresh out of college, and heading to business school. It was just temporary, or so I thought. The basement had a twin bed, a desk lamp, and a musty closet. Victoria got the $4.2 million Tribeca penthouse with floor-to-ceiling views of the Hudson. I got a view of oil stains and recycling bins. But that basement had something her penthouse didn't. When Parkinson's stole my father's balance and dignity, I could see his struggles at midnight, clear as day. For 8 years, my alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. sharp. Not for a workout, not for meditation, but to give him his carbidopa levodopa. Parkinson's doesn't care about your sleep schedule. Stage 3 is relentless. So, I learned the rhythm. 4:30 a.m., medication. 8 a.m., ropinirole. Noon, amantadine. Before I knew how to pronounce bradykinesia, I had the pill schedule memorized. Before I knew what they were for, I knew every dosage. 2,847 nights. That's 8 years, minus hospital stays. 2,847 times, I climbed those basement stairs and walked into his room to make sure he didn't choke on pills his trembling hands couldn't hold. And Patricia? She was asleep every single time the alarm rang. After all, she had a massive estate to manage. Social calendars, charity galas, and spa weekends at Canyon Ranch. She went 8 times while his health was failing. I never woke her up. What would have been the point? In 2016, I was in my second year of my MBA at NYU, 6 months from graduating and 6 months from escaping the basement. Then, Dad called. His voice was shaking. Not from excitement, but from the tremors. "Anna, I need to tell you something. Stage 3 Parkinson's." His neurologist told him he had 5 to 10 years, if he was lucky. Patricia suggested hiring a nurse. Victoria texted from San Francisco, "Just hire someone. You're ruining your future." 3 days later, I dropped out. I wasn't a martyr. I wasn't holier than anyone else. But when I was 7 and broke my arm falling off my bike, Dad sat in the ER for 6 hours, holding my good hand and telling me stories to take my mind off the pain. When I failed my SATs and thought my life was over, he stayed up until 3 a.m. helping me prep for a retake. I didn't ruin my life. I chose to stand up for the man who stood up for me my entire childhood. That wasn't a sacrifice. It was a privilege Victoria could never understand. The MBA tuition cost me $87,000, money I'd never get back. Victoria called it throwing your life away. I called it being there. Patricia told everyone my father's medical expenses were covered by insurance. She was lying. Insurance only covers the basics. It doesn't cover the unnecessary neurologist visits Patricia complained about. It doesn't cover the physical therapists she thought were too expensive. It doesn't cover the grab bars, the wheelchair, the hospital bed, or the home modifications that kept him safe. So I paid. When my grandmother passed away in 2015, she left me $180,000. I had planned to use it for a down payment on my own place after grad school. Instead, that money kept my father alive. Then, I burned through the $90,000 I'd saved from undergrad internships. Then I started freelancing. Copywriting, tutoring, anything I could do from the basement between his medication windows. Over 8 years, I scrounged up another $70,000. That's $340,000 across 127 bank transfers. Every single one was documented, because I was careful. Deep down, I knew Patricia would eventually try to rewrite history. She kept every cent Dad gave her. I gave every cent I had to Dad, but I kept every receipt. She had no idea. Do you know what it's really like to care for a patient? It's not like the photos Victoria posted on Instagram during her 4 visits. It's 6 a.m. grocery runs, finished before Patricia woke up so she wouldn't complain about me using her car. It's cleaning the bathroom after a tremor-induced accident left him feeling humiliated and shaking. It's holding him at 2 a.m. while he cried about being a burden. It's 287 trips to the grocery store and 41 midnight ER visits when he fell. It's 600 hours of physical therapy not covered by insurance, so I learned how to do it myself from YouTube. It's making every single meal because Patricia said meal delivery was wasteful, yet she never cooked a day in her life. It's a silence, a loneliness. You're the only one watching someone's cells die off bit by bit, while everyone else is debating whether or not to visit for Christmas. At my father's 75th birthday party, a $40,000 event Patricia threw at a country club, she gave a speech thanking everyone who had supported Richard on his health journey. Her eyes passed right over me. I was standing 3 feet away, holding his wheelchair steady so he wouldn't roll backward down the ramp. That night, Victoria posted a selfie with Dad. The caption? "So grateful for this man." 180,000 followers, 12,000 likes. She left before dessert to catch a flight for a big meeting. At 4 a.m. the next day, when that greasy, expensive food made him sick, I was the one cleaning up his vomit. No one posted that. Patricia was calculated. I'll give her that. She didn't just erase me from the family narrative. She did it over years, systematically and subtly, so subtly that I didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Christmas cards signed, Patricia, Richard, and Victoria. In 2017, my name vanished. Family photos from company events? I was accidentally cropped out for 8 years straight. The annual gala for Barnes Medical Supplies, where they honored Dad as the founder. I wasn't invited 14 times. Patricia said there weren't enough seats at the table, but somehow there was always room for Victoria's new monthly boyfriend. When business partners asked about Dad's family, Patricia would introduce Victoria as our daughter, the Salesforce VP, Stanford MBA, Forbes 30 under 30. When she couldn't be bothered to pretend, she'd introduce me. This is Anna. She helps out around the house with some chores. The tone made me sound like the housekeeper, not his daughter. I didn't need a seat at their table. I had a place at my father's bedside, but every time it still stung. The Grand Meridian Ballroom was disgustingly opulent. Chandeliers the size of cars, 40-foot ceilings, white roses everywhere, thousands of them, worth an estimated $30,000. Catering was $850 a head for 380 people. You do the math. I wore a black dress I bought at a thrift store for $40. It was clean, it was respectful. After spending everything on Dad, it was all I could afford. Victoria was wearing Chanel, a $6,800 morning gown, likely provided by her PR team. As soon as I walked in, Patricia saw me. Her face twisted, not with sadness, but with disgust. She crossed the room in 4-inch heels, grabbed my sleeve in front of the Vanderbilts and hissed, "Did you get that at a donation bin? You couldn't even look presentable at your own father's funeral?" 380 people, at least 40 were watching. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Dad always said funerals are for the living," I said. "I spent my money keeping him alive. You spent yours on flowers he couldn't see." She gritted her teeth. She wanted to slap me. I could see it in her eyes. But we had an audience, so she pivoted, smiling at the Vanderbilts. "Anna has always been so practical." Practical. That's the word she used when she meant trashy. Row 18, seat 3. That's where they put me. 18 rows back. Sitting behind the golf buddies he saw once a year to talk stocks. Behind business acquaintances who had met him twice. Behind people who knew Richard Barnes, CEO, and not the dad who cried during Pixar movies. Victoria sat in the front row, center seat, flanked by the Barnes Medical Board members and a New York Times photographer there to document the mogul's passing. Mr. Abrams, the funeral director, was a kind man. I'd seen him every day at the hospice for the past month. When I found my seat, he looked uncomfortable. He whispered, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Barnes arranged the seating." Of course she did. But Patricia didn't count on one thing. I didn't need a front row seat to know where I stood in my father's heart. She needed everyone to see Victoria there, because without the performance, the lie would fall apart. Patricia drifted through the ballroom like she was campaigning, shaking hands, accepting condolences with rehearsed tears, and introducing Victoria to every group of wealthy mourners like she was launching a new product. When she reached Richard Chen, a VP at Goldman Sachs, she didn't even pause. She just pointed vaguely in my direction and said, "Oh, that's Anna, she just helps out around the house. Couldn't find a real job, so Richard let her stay." "The help?" She called me the help. Richard Chen looked at me for a long time. Then he reached past Patricia, took my hand, and said quietly, "Your father spoke very highly of you. He said you were the strongest person he'd ever known." Patricia's smile froze and cracked like ice. I thanked him. I didn't correct Patricia. I didn't defend myself, because within 48 hours everyone in that room would know exactly who I was. For 90 minutes, Patricia paraded Victoria around like a trophy. Every conversation was the same script. "This is Victoria, my daughter. Salesforce VP, Stanford MBA, Forbes 30 under 30. Richard was so proud of her. My daughter." She said it 8 times, I counted. She never mentioned my name once. Victoria played her part perfectly. Graceful, humble. "Thank you so much. Dad was my hero." She had the PR lines down, wearing a sorrowful smile and a single graceful tear that never smudged her mascara. But I knew something Patricia didn't. I knew that for 8 years Dad never called Victoria his daughter. Not once. He called her Patricia's project. He told me that one night when the pain was unbearable and the meds weren't working. "I love that girl," he told me, "but she doesn't love me. She loves the aura of me." He was right. After the service, there was a reception in the next room. Open mic for anyone who wanted to share memories. I waited until the business partners finished their polished anecdotes. Then I walked toward the podium. Patricia intercepted me. She blocked my path and hissed, loud enough for people to hear, "What are you doing? You aren't prepared. Let Victoria speak. She knows how to handle a crowd." I said, "I held his hand when he died. I think I can hold a microphone." "Don't cause a scene." 380 people. 40 were watching this confrontation now, including the Times photographer. I took a step back. Not because I was afraid, but because Dad taught me to pick my battles. He taught me that people who need to perform are the ones unsure of their own worth. I was very sure of mine. So I let Victoria take the stage. 12 minutes. That's how long she spoke. 12 minutes of flowery, empty poetry about a man she'd seen 4 times in 8 years. She quoted him. Dad always said, "Every setback is a setup for a comeback." I almost laughed out loud. He said that to me when I dropped out of business school and thought my life was over. She'd only heard it once at Thanksgiving in 2019, when he was comforting himself after a bad fall. She hadn't even been listening. She was scrolling Instagram. She thanked doctors, nurses, and the wonderful caregivers who brought him dignity in his final years. But she never said my name. She thanked everyone except the daughter who had been there for 2,847 nights. The daughter who knew which meds caused nausea, which ones had to be taken with food, who knew he took his coffee with 2 sugars, and who knew he preferred audiobooks to TV because screens strained his eyes. She thanked faceless, plural caregivers, as if a whole team had been there. There was no team, just me. Victoria finished at 2:45 p.m. By 2:47 p.m., her Instagram story was updated. A black and white photo of her at the podium with a tear on her cheek. The caption, "Goodbye to my hero, #legacy, #grief journey, #love never dies." Dad wasn't even in the ground yet, and she was already posting. 180,000 followers saw it. 12,000 likes in 20 minutes. Comments poured in. "So brave." Beautiful tribute. "You're an inspiration." I closed the app. Brave is changing your father's bedpan at 3 a.m. while he apologizes for being alive. Inspiring is 8 years of invisible labor while someone else takes the applause. I didn't say any of this. I saved my energy, because in 48 hours, everyone would see who really stood up for him. When I get angry, I have a habit. I count. I make lists in my head. It keeps me calm. It stops me from saying things I'll regret. So, while Victoria spoke, I counted her lies. Lie 1, I visited every week, 4 times in 8 years. Lie 2, he was proud of my career. He asked me why she never called. Lie 3, we had deep conversations about life. The last one was her asking for $5,000 for a bag. He said no, and she didn't call for 9 months. Lie 4. He taught me everything about resilience. He taught her. She was in Palo Alto learning how to make funding slides. 8 lies total. I counted them all, but I didn't interrupt. I let her finish her performance because in 72 hours, the truth would be louder than any eulogy she could give. The funeral ended at 4:30 p.m. The guests filed out, offering condolences, leaving in black Lincolns. By 5 p.m., the ballroom was nearly empty. Just me, Patricia, Victoria, and the catering staff cleaning up $323,000 worth of barely touched appetizers. Patricia walked toward me, smiling. Not a kind smile, but a winner's smile. She shoved an envelope into my hand. It had a law firm's letterhead, Morrison & Chase. "This is your notice," she said sweetly. "You have 72 hours to vacate the property, from Friday at 2 p.m. to Monday at 2 p.m. That's the law." I opened it. An eviction notice, officially notarized, accompanied by an emergency petition for probate. My hands didn't shake, I was numb. "Where do you expect me to go?" "That's not my problem," Patricia said. "You lived rent-free in Richard's house for 8 years. It's time you learned to stand on your own." Victoria looked uncomfortable but said nothing. She was staring at her phone, likely planning her next post. Patricia wasn't done. She leaned in, lowering her voice so the catering staff wouldn't hear. "The will reading is Monday at 2 p.m. Don't bother showing up. Richard left the estate to family, real family. Victoria and I will handle his assets." My throat tightened. $8.7 million in assets. The brownstone, the company shares. "You think he'd leave all that to me?" She laughed, an actual audible laugh. "Darling, you didn't contribute a cent to this family's wealth. I'm sure Richard was grateful you looked after him. But gratitude doesn't pay out as an inheritance." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Anna? Don't even think about taking any of his personal effects. Medical records, files, letters, those belong to the estate now, all of it." I whispered, "Can I at least have his books?" "We'll see." She patted my shoulder, faking sympathy. "Maybe if you act polite on your way out." After they left, I sat in my car in the parking lot for an hour. I couldn't drive. I couldn't think. I opened my Bank of America app. $4,200.38. That's what 8 years of caregiving leaves you with. That's the result of $340,000 in medical bills and zero income. That's what happens when you choose love over money. And those who chose money got the right to write the story. Victoria's latest Instagram post showed a $15,000 Hermes bag. She'd bought it the week before Dad died. The caption, "Treating myself #self-care. I had $4,200 and 72 hours to find a place to live, a job, and a way to fight a probate attorney who probably charged $950 an hour." I had nothing. Just then my phone buzzed, 10:47 p.m. An unknown number, a text. "Ms. Barnes, I am James Morrison, your father's attorney. We need to talk tonight. Do not tell Patricia. This is extremely urgent. Can you be at my office in 1 hour?" I stared at the screen. James Morrison. I'd never met him. For 30 years, all of Dad's legal matters were handled through him. But the person always going to the meetings was Patricia. She'd told me those things were too complex for me, that I wouldn't understand. I Googled him, Morrison & Chase, Wall Street. 30 years in estate law, handled 15 major probate cases, never lost one. "Why would my father's attorney want to meet me at midnight on the night of his funeral?" I replied, "I'll be there." I grabbed my coat, my purse, and the envelope Patricia had given me. Then, I drove into the night toward Wall Street, with no idea that everything I thought I knew about my father was wrong. But I was about to find out. Morrison & Chase occupied the entire 42nd floor of a glass tower in the financial district. At 11:50 p.m. on a Friday, the office was pitch black, except for one room in the corner that cast a warm light from behind frosted glass. I took the elevator up. The doors opened to silence. Marble floors, expensive art. This was the kind of place that billed $1,200 an hour without blinking. James Morrison was waiting at the reception desk. Nearly 70, graying hair, gold-rimmed glasses, kind eyes. He shook my hand. "Ms. Barnes, thank you for coming. I know this must be confusing. Please come with me." He brought me into a conference room overlooking the city. Manhattan shimmered below our feet. 1,000 buildings, 1,000,000 lives, and not one person knew my entire world was about to be turned upside down. Morrison sat across from me and placed a manila envelope on the table. It was sealed with red wax bearing my father's initials, RCB. 8 months ago, your father made me promise him one thing, Morrison said calmly. If Patricia did what I suspected she was doing, I had to give this to you. I stared at the envelope. What is this? The truth. Morrison broke the seal. Inside was a document. 23 pages filled with legal jargon I barely understood, but a few phrases jumped out immediately. I, Richard Charles Barnes, being of sound mind and body, hereby revoke all previous wills and codicils. Signed, March 15th, 2024. March 15th, 6 months before he died. Morrison pushed the will across the table. Your father updated his will on March 15th. He had full mental capacity. I have statements from 3 doctors. He left 60% of his estate to you. My hands went numb. What? $5.2 million in liquid assets, 40% controlling interest in Barnes Medical Supplies with full voting rights, and sole ownership of the family brownstone on Montague Street. I couldn't breathe. But Patricia said, Patricia has been lying to you for a long time. Morrison pulled out a second document, thicker, handwritten, 47 pages long. It's your father's handwriting. A bit shaky from the tremors, but definitely his. Your father left a letter of intent, Morrison said, explaining his decision. Let me read the first page. He cleared his throat. He read slowly. To whom it may concern, my daughter, Anna Barnes, has been my primary caregiver for 8 years. She sacrificed her career, her savings, and her future to ensure I did not die alone. When my wife, Patricia, claimed the costs were too high and unnecessary, Anna drained $340,000 of her inheritance from her grandmother to pay for my care. For 2,847 days, Anna woke up at 4:30 a.m. to give me my meds. She held me through seizures Patricia never saw. She cleaned me after accidents Patricia refused to acknowledge. She took me to 41 ER visits. She learned medical terminology. She fought insurance companies. She researched clinical trials. Patricia and Victoria visited me a combined 12 times in 8 years. Anna spent 2,847 nights with me. She is the reason I left this world with dignity instead of despair. Everything I have I owe to her company. This will shall reflect that truth. I started to cry. Not from grief, but from being seen. For 8 years I had been invisible. And here, in 47 pages of ink, my father had seen every single moment. Morrison handed me a tissue. He saw you, Anna, every single day. I wiped my eyes. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Why wait until now? Morrison leaned back. Because your father anticipated this exact scenario. He called it the sealed envelope protocol. What does that mean? He knew Patricia would try to enforce a fake will. He knew she would try to erase you from the family story. So he gave me strict instructions. If Patricia filed for emergency probate or attempted to evict you, I was legally obligated to produce this true will on Monday at 2 p.m. with all parties present. Why Monday? Why not now? Morrison gave a cold smile. Because he wanted witnesses. He wanted you to see her face when the truth came out, and he wanted to give her enough rope to hang herself. I stared at him. Dad had set a trap. Your father was a master strategist, and he loved you more than you ever dared to believe. Morrison opened a file box. Inside were 8 years of evidence. Bank statements, every one of the 127 transfers I'd made, totaling $340,000. The medical power of attorney from 2017, signed by Dad and 3 witnesses, with Patricia's name crossed out in red ink and mine added below. ER discharge papers, all 41 visits, listing me as the primary contact and decision-maker. Patricia's name was nowhere to be found. Medication logs, handwritten in both my and Dad's shaky script, tracking every dosage, every side effect, every adjustment. Hospice visitor logs, showing my name 183 times in his final 6 months, while Patricia's appeared twice and Victoria's once. Your father kept copies of everything, Morrison said. He knew you'd need proof. I stared at the files. 8 years of my life condensed into paper, but it was all there. Every ounce of effort, the invisible labor, finally laid bare. Why did he think I'd need proof? I whispered. Morrison's face turned grim. Because he knew what Patricia was capable of. Morrison handed me the final page of Dad's letter, page 47. His handwriting, penned in his final weeks, was barely legible, but the meaning was piercingly clear. Anna, they will underestimate you. Patricia will call you weak. Victoria will call you a failure. the world will see a 34-year-old woman with no career, no degree, and no obvious value. Let them. Those who underestimate you are handing you the element of surprise. They are surrendering their advantage. They won't realize you're fighting back until it's too late. I wish I could be there to see you prove them wrong, but I know you will. You spent 8 years proving your worth to me. Now, it's time to prove it to them. You are the best decision I ever made. From the day you were born, you made me a better man. I love you more than words can express. Dad. I read it 3 times. The first time I cried too hard to see the words. The second time I felt the grief, the weight of everything I'd lost. The third time I felt something else, something cold, sharp, and focused. Rage, not the hot burning kind, but the kind tempered into steel. I looked up at Morrison. What do I need to do? He smiled. Show up at 1:45 p.m. on Monday with everything in this box. Leave the rest to me. I nodded. And Patricia, she's going to fight this. She will. She's hired Gerald Strauss, the best probate litigator in New York. He'll attack your credibility, your motives, your relationship with your father. He'll try to paint you as a manipulator who took advantage of a dying old man. What do I do then? Morrison's grin sharpened. You let him perform, and then you bury him with the facts. I stood up and shook his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. It's going to get ugly. Patricia won't go down quietly. Good, I said. I don't want easy. I want justice. At 1:30 a.m., I left Morrison's office. I drove back to the brownstone, my father's house, no matter what Patricia claimed. I didn't sleep. I read Dad's letter over and over. By dawn, I had a plan. Let them underestimate me. Saturday, 8 a.m., 40 hours until the will reading. I turned the basement into a war room. I taped page 47 of Dad's letter to the wall above the desk. Below it, a timeline, evidence binders, Morrison's business card, and a notepad with one word written in thick marker. Focus. Morrison called at 8:15. Are you holding up? Ready. Good. Strauss knows you exist now. He'll come for your ability to make medical decisions. Be ready to prove you were the right person for the job. I have 8 years of evidence. Then organize it chronologically. Use color codes if you can. Make it so airtight that not even Strauss can find a crack. I hung up. I got to work. 14 hours. That's how long it took to condense 8 years of caregiving into 3 binders. Blue binder, finances, 127 bank transfers, everyone printed, highlighted, and annotated with what it paid for. Neurologist visits, physical therapy, the wheelchair, the hospital bed, medications not covered by insurance. I cross-referenced every transfer with a receipt, every receipt with medical necessity. Green binder, medical, 2,847 medication logs. Handwritten by Dad and me. Dates, times, dosages, side effects. 41 ER discharge papers. Hospice records, neuroevaluations, physical therapy reports. Red binder, Patricia's lies. This was smaller but lethal. Emails where she told Dad's friends everything is under control while refusing to pay for his medical needs. Texts where she suggested Dad stop expensive treatments. Social media posts bragging about being a devoted wife while I was cleaning vomit at 3 a.m. By 2 a.m. Sunday, I was finished. 3 binders, 8 years of invisible labor turned into ironclad, undeniable truth. I found something I'd nearly forgotten. Dad's 2017 medical power of attorney. His signature was on the witness line. Patricia's name was crossed out in red ink. My name was added in blue. She had never seen this document. She had no idea it existed. It was going to be her undoing. Sunday, 9 a.m. Morrison's office, a 6-hour crash course in probate law and what to expect. Strauss will attack in 3 waves, Morrison explained. First, your credibility. He'll imply you manipulated a dying man. Second, your motives. He'll suggest you only cared about your father to get the estate. Third, your relationship. He'll claim you were estranged, distant, and that Patricia was the true caregiver. How do I answer? You don't. I answer. Your job is to stay calm. Don't get emotional. Don't defend yourself. Let the evidence speak. We practiced 40 mock questions. Ms. Barnes, you dropped out of business school. Isn't that a fact? Ms. Barnes, you have no career, no income. Weren't you financially dependent on your father? Ms. Barnes, how much money were you expecting to inherit? The questions were designed to make me sound like a gold digger, a manipulator, a parasite. By the 40th question, I wasn't shrinking or defending anymore. I just said calmly, the evidence speaks for itself. Morrison nodded. Perfect. That's your line, no matter what he asks. The evidence speaks for itself. Don't elaborate, don't explain, just point to the binders. What if Victoria cries? I asked. Morrison paused. If she does, what will you do? I'll remember that she only visited 4 times in 8 years. He smiled. Good. Don't let emotions blind you to the facts. Sunday, 3 p.m. Morrison left me in the conference room. Practice your statement. You'll have 3 minutes to address the room before presenting evidence. Make it count. I practiced 40 times. First, voice shaking, tears, too emotional. 10th, angry, accusatory, too bitter. 20th, robotic, cold, too detached. 40th, calm, objective, stating only the facts. My name is Anna Barnes. I was my father's primary caregiver for 8 years. I spent $340,000 of my own savings on his medical care. For 2,847 days, I woke up at 4:30 a.m. to administer his meds. I held the medical power of attorney. I was there when he died. Here is the evidence. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Short, direct, irrefutable. Morrison returned. How do you feel? Ready? Ready. Remember, they expect you to break. Don't give them that satisfaction. I wouldn't. Sunday, 6 p.m., 20 hours until the will reading. Patricia posted on Instagram. A photo of her and Victoria at a spa, holding champagne flutes. The caption, so happy to honor my husband's final wishes tomorrow. Family is everything. 4,200 likes in an hour. Comments flooded in, you're so strong. What a beautiful legacy. Richard would be so proud of you. Victoria posted too. 9 p.m. Sunday. A photo of the Manhattan skyline from her Tribeca apartment balcony. The caption, new chapter starting on Monday. Grateful for the responsibility. Responsibility, as if she had any idea what that word meant. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't engage. I was too busy preparing the evidence that would end their performance forever. Sunday, 11:30 p.m., 20 hours left. I couldn't sleep. I lay on the basement cot, staring at the ceiling, reading Dad's letter for the 100th time. Let them underestimate you. Morrison had warned me. Patricia wouldn't give up easily. She'd play dirty. She'd attack me personally. She'd cast me as the villain. I didn't care. I'd been the villain in her story for 12 years. The freeloader, the loser, the burden. Tomorrow I'd show her exactly who I was. Monday, 7 a.m., 13 hours left. I put on that $40 black dress, the one Patricia had mocked at the funeral. Let them see this loser walk into that office. Let her think she'd won. She would never see the strike coming until it was too late. Monday, 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. The reception at Morrison & Chase was on the 42nd floor. Glass walls, marble floors, a panoramic view of Manhattan. It was the kind of office that didn't just wield power, it breathed it. Patricia and Victoria were already there, sitting in the waiting area as if they owned the building. Patricia was in a black Armani suit with designer sunglasses perched on her head. Victoria was scrolling her phone, likely drafting her next post. Patricia saw me first. Her smile vanished. She stood up. What are you doing here? I walked past her, saying nothing, clutching my 3 binders like a shield. Anna, I'm talking to you. This is a private family meeting. I turned, meeting her eyes. I am family. You're nothing but a lingering caretaker. Security! The receptionist, a nervous 20-something, picked up the phone. Before she could dial, a door opened. A man walked out. Late 50s, expensive suit, slicked back hair, carrying a briefcase worth more than my car. Gerald Strauss, Patricia's attorney. He looked me up and down and smiled. Not a kind smile, a shark's grin. Ms. Barnes, I am Gerald Strauss, representing Mrs. Patricia Barnes in this probate matter. I'm afraid you have no legal standing to attend this reading. Your presence is inappropriate and potentially disruptive. I stayed silent. Morrison had taught me, let them overexpose their hand. Security will escort you out, Strauss continued. Please leave quietly, or I'll have you removed. The tall security guard approached, looking apologetic. Victoria whispered, Mom, is this necessary? Patricia snapped, Yes, she is not family, not by any meaningful definition. Ms. Barnes has no legal claim to Richard Barnes's estate. Strauss raised his voice, not just for the receptionist, but for the 7 other people waiting in the hall. Distant relatives, business partners, people I'd never met who were about to witness the humiliation. Her name is not on the will. Her attendance violates probate procedure. I demand she be removed immediately. The receptionist stammered, I'm sorry, Mr. Strauss, but Mr. Morrison said, I don't care what Morrison said, I am ordering you. The conference room door opened. James Morrison walked out. He was calm, unhurried, looking at Strauss, then at Patricia, then at me. "Mr. Strauss," Morrison said in a steady tone, "Miss Barnes is a primary beneficiary of Richard Barnes's estate. She has every legal right to attend this reading. In fact, her absence would violate probate procedure. If anyone should leave, it's you. You are here only as counsel for a secondary beneficiary, and a secondary beneficiary has no say over the primary will." Strauss's jaw tightened. "I demand proof of documentation." "You will see it in about 8 minutes. The reading begins promptly at 2 p.m. Until then, Ms. Barnes is not only invited, she is required to be here." Patricia's face turned deep red. "This is preposterous. Richard left the estate to me and Victoria. I have a copy of the will right here." Morrison raised a hand. "Mrs. Barnes, I strongly suggest you save your objections for the appropriate time. Currently, your attempt to exclude a named beneficiary is a violation of probate procedure in itself." Strauss stepped forward. "Morrison, I don't know what game you're playing." "There is no game, only the law. Now, if everyone would follow me into the conference room, we begin promptly at 2. The conference room. 18 seats, 14 occupied. A long table, Manhattan shimmering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Patricia and Victoria on one side, me on the other. Alone. 4 business partners from Dad's company, 3 distant cousins I'd met twice, 2 accountants. Morrison took the head of the table. Strauss stood. No one offered him a seat. 1:58 p.m., 2 minutes left. Morrison placed 2 envelopes on the table. 1 white, 1 manila. Patricia stared at the manila envelope. She recognized it. She'd seen it, or thought she had. She didn't recognize the white one. That one was new. Morrison looked at me and nodded. I nodded back. 2 p.m., let the reckoning begin. Morrison checked his watch. It is 2 p.m. We will begin the reading of the last will and testament of Richard Charles Barnes, signed on March 15, 2024. Witnessed by 3 parties, notarized in the state of New York. March 15th, 6 months before Dad died. Patricia leaned forward. Her smile froze. "Wait, March 15th? That's impossible. The will was updated in September." Morrison didn't look up. "Mrs. Barnes, please hold your questions until the reading is concluded." Strauss interjected. "Mr. Morrison, my client possesses a valid will dated September 2, 2024, which supersedes all prior wills." "Mr. Strauss, I will address all challenges after the reading. Sit down or leave." Strauss sat. It was the first time I'd ever seen a lawyer look uncertain. Morrison opened the white envelope. 23 pages. Undeniable legal force. "I, Richard Charles Barnes, being of sound mind and body, hereby revoke all wills and codicils signed prior to this date." Morrison read slowly, articulating every syllable, each word hitting like a hammer. "To my daughter, Anna Marie Barnes, I leave 60% of the estate, including liquid assets valued at $5.2 million, a 40% controlling interest in Barnes Medical Supplies with all voting rights, and sole ownership of the family brownstone at 47 Montague Street, Brooklyn." Silence, absolutely suffocating silence. Patricia lunged to her feet. "That's impossible. That's a forgery." Morrison looked up. "Mrs. Barnes, please sit down and stay quiet." "I will not sit down. That is not the real will. Richard would never—" "Mrs. Barnes, sit down or I will have security remove you." Victoria grabbed Patricia's arm. "Mom, sit down, please." Patricia sat, but her face was ashen, her hands trembling. Morrison continued. "To Victoria Lynn Barnes Ashford, I leave a trust fund of $200,000, payable at $50,000 per year for 4 years, contingent upon her proving financial independence and employment outside of family-affiliated businesses." Victoria's face fell. $200,000. But Mom said—" Patricia gripped her hand tight. "Don't say a word." But it was too late. Everyone in the room saw it. The shock, the disbelief. Morrison flipped the page. "To Patricia Allen Barnes, I leave the provision guaranteed in our 2013 prenuptial agreement. The condominium in Miami, Florida, valued at $800,000, with no further claim to the estate or business assets. All other assets go to Anna Marie Barnes. $800,000. That was it. 12 years of marriage for an $800,000 condo she'd visited twice. Patricia stood again. This time, no one stopped her. "He wasn't of sound mind. He had Parkinson's. This is elder abuse. She manipulated him." Morrison raised a hand. Mrs. Barnes, if you are challenging your late husband's cognitive capacity, I have 3 assessments here from neurologists dated March 10th, 2024, 5 days before the will was signed, confirming full cognitive function. Would you like me to read them? He had Parkinson's. He couldn't possibly... Parkinson's affects motor skills, Mrs. Barnes. Not cognitive capacity, not decision-making. Your husband was legally competent to sign this document, and he did. Strauss stood. This was his moment. Mr. Morrison, I formally challenge this will on the grounds of cognitive decline. Mr. Barnes suffered from advanced Parkinson's. Stage 3. His decline was documented. Documented by whom? Morrison asked. By the medical records, by his condition, by... Morrison slid 3 files across the table. Dr. Lisa Chen, neurologist, Dr. Michael Torres, geriatric psychiatrist, Dr. Amanda Reeves, cognitive specialist. They all evaluated Mr. Barnes on March 10, 2024. All confirmed a mini mental state examination, MMSE score of 28/30, well within the normal cognitive range. All signed affidavits confirming his legal capacity to execute a will. Strauss picked up the files. He read them. His face sank. But Mr. Barnes had motor symptoms. Mr. Strauss. Tremors, bradykinesia, postural instability, none of these affect cognition. In fact, his doctors noted that until August 2024, 5 months after this will was signed, his brain remained remarkably sharp. Patricia screamed. Actually screamed. It's a lie. Anna poisoned him against me. She isolated him. Morrison opened the manila envelope. Mrs. Barnes, your husband anticipated you would challenge this will. So he left a letter of intent, 47 pages, handwritten, explaining his decisions in his own words. I'll read a few excerpts. He adjusted his glasses and read aloud. It was Dad's voice, channeled through Morrison. Anna sacrificed 8 years of her life to care for me. When Patricia claimed the costs were too high and unnecessary, she drained $340,000 of her inheritance from her grandmother to pay for my medical needs. Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. For 2,847 days, Anna woke up at 4:30 a.m. every morning. She held me through seizures Patricia never saw. She cleaned me after accidents Patricia refused to acknowledge. She took me to 41 ER visits. Patricia and Victoria visited me a combined 12 times in 8 years. Anna spent 2,847 nights with me. Morrison paused. Let the words settle in the room. Then he continued. She is the reason I left this world with dignity. Everything I have, I owe to her company. Victoria began to cry quietly and desperately. Patricia sat frozen, utterly destroyed. Morrison produced my blue binder, sliding it across the table. Anna's bank records. 127 transfers over 8 years, totaling $340,000. Medical equipment, prescriptions, physical therapy not covered by insurance, ER out-of-pocket costs, home modifications. When Patricia refused to pay, Anna Barnes paid out of her own pocket. Strauss flipped through the pages. His expression said it all. It was airtight, documented, undeniable. Every transfer is cross-referenced with receipts, Morrison added. Every receipt cross-referenced with medical necessity. Patricia Barnes paid for none of it. One of the business partners, a man named David Wong, leaned forward. Patricia, you told us the medical expenses were covered by insurance. Patricia didn't answer. Patricia, you told the board Richard's care was well managed. You said there were no financial issues. Still, no answer. Morrison wasn't finished. And for the record, Anna Barnes has held the medical power of attorney since 2017. Not Patricia. Richard revoked Patricia's power in May 2017 because she suggested stopping the ineffective and expensive treatments. He held up the document. Dad's signature, 3 witnesses, notarized, Patricia's name crossed out in red, my name added in blue. For the final 7 years of Richard Barnes's life, Anna Barnes made every medical decision. She had full legal authority. She was his health proxy. When he could not speak, she was his voice. Everyone turned to Patricia. Victoria whispered, Mom, what do you mean by stopping treatments? Patricia had no answer, because there was no answer that wouldn't incriminate her. Strauss tried one last effort. Mr. Morrison, my client has a will dated September 2nd, 2024. This is 6 months after yours. Does the latest will not supersede the previous one? Morrison cut him off. The will you have was created 3 weeks after Richard Barnes's neurologist declared he lacked the capacity to sign legal documents. August 10, 2024. Dr. Chen noted in her records that Mr. Barnes had lost the ability to make complex decisions. Your will is dated September 2nd. This renders it null and void and potentially fraudulent. Strauss dropped the document like it was on fire. Patricia grabbed it. This is legal. I had it notarized. Morrison smiled coldly. Notarized by whom? By a notary, a real notary. Her name? Patricia stammered. I don't remember. Her name is Sandra Willis, and she contacted my office yesterday. She said you paid her $5,000 to notarize a document without proper witnesses. That is notary fraud, Mrs. Barnes. In the state of New York, that is a felony. The room went dead silent. Even Strauss stepped back, distancing himself from Patricia. Morrison gestured to the door. I also brought witnesses who can attest to Anna's dedication. 3 people walked in. I recognized all of them. Dr. Lisa Chen, Dad's neurologist for 8 years, Susan Kim, the physical therapist who came to the house twice a week, Harold Green, our neighbor. Dr. Chen spoke first. I served as Richard Barnes's lead physician from 2017 until his death. Anna attended every single appointment, every one. She took notes. She asked about medication interactions, side effects, timing. Patricia came once, the initial diagnosis. She asked about life insurance. Anna asked about quality of life. Then Susan Kim. I provided physical therapy for Richard for 6 years. Anna did the exercises with him at home every day. She learned medical terminology. She learned how to support him during transfers. She never missed a session. As for Patricia, I saw her once. She asked if we took Medicare. Harold Green, our 80-year-old neighbor, spoke last. I lived next door. For 8 years, I watched Anna push that wheelchair to the park every Sunday. Rain or shine, she'd sit with him for hours. They'd talk, they'd laugh. I'd see Patricia leave for spa weekends while Anna was helping Richard after a 3 a.m. fall. I'm not a lawyer, but I know who was there for him. And it wasn't Patricia. 3 witnesses, 3 sworn statements, all saying the same thing. Anna was there. Patricia wasn't. Victoria tried to defend herself. Or maybe Patricia. I couldn't tell. This is crazy, she said, her voice shaking. Dad loved us both. He would never... Morrison looked at her, not unkindly, but firmly. Ms. Ashford, how many times did you visit your father in the last 8 years? I was busy. My career... How many times? Silence. Would you like me to show you the hospice visitor logs? Anna documented every single visit. Victoria looked at me. Really? It was the first time in 8 years she had actually looked at me. 4, I said calmly. You visited him 4 times in 8 years. The last time was 9 months before he died. You asked him for $5,000 for a bag. He said no. You never called again. Victoria's face crumbled. She turned to Patricia. You told me he was fine. You said Anna was exaggerating. You said... She stopped, realization hitting her. Oh my God, Mom. What did you do? Patricia grabbed her hand. Don't say another word. But it was too late. Victoria pulled her hand away, stood up and looked at me. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know it was that bad. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Patricia stood up for one last desperate lunge. I'm going to sue for undue influence. I'm going to tie this up for years. I'm going to ruin both of you. I have lawyers. I have money. I'm going to... Morrison held up the second envelope. The white one. Sealed. You can certainly try, Mrs. Barnes, but before you do, you should know your husband left behind evidence of financial impropriety. Patricia froze. What financial impropriety? Morrison broke the seal. Shall I open it, or would you prefer to leave quietly? Open it, Patricia shrieked. I have nothing to hide. Morrison opened the document, read silently for a moment, and looked up. In January 2024, Richard Barnes hired a forensic accountant. He discovered that between 2018 and 2023, Patricia Barnes transferred $1.2 million from his medical fund into her personal accounts. Silence, absolutely suffocating silence. Morrison slid the report across the table. 47 pages of wire transfers, dates, amounts, account numbers. $1.2 million. 47 fraudulent transactions, taken from the account Richard specifically set up for his Parkinson's care and moved into Patricia's personal checking. What was it for, Mrs. Barnes? The spa weekends at Canyon Ranch, designer bags, that Range Rover? Patricia said nothing. Richard confronted you in February 2024. You told him it was our money. He submitted this report to my office and instructed me to include it in the probate proceedings should you challenge the will. One of the business partners, David Wong, stood up. "Patricia, is this true?" Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. "It was our money. It was his medical fund. He didn't need that much. Anna was inflating his expenses. I was just managing our assets." David shook his head. "You stole a dying man's medical fund, and his daughter was paying out of her own pocket to keep him alive." Now even Strauss was backing away. Strauss raised a hand. "I need to verify these documents. I request a 45-minute recess." Morrison nodded. "Granted, but Mrs. Barnes and Miss Ashford cannot leave this building. This is still an active probate proceeding." Patricia stood, trying to head for the door. Morrison blocked her path. "Mrs. Barnes, you aren't going anywhere." "You can't keep me here." "Actually, I can. You are a key witness in a probate matter involving potential fraud charges. If you leave this building, I will have the police pick you up within the hour." Patricia looked at Strauss. "Do something." Strauss shook his head. "Mrs. Barnes, I strongly suggest you cooperate." She sat back down. The recess began. I walked into the hallway. I needed air. I needed space. Patricia followed. "You calculating little brat!" She grabbed my arm. "You planned this. You brainwashed him against me. You isolated him. I jerked my arm away. "When you were doing spa treatments at Canyon Ranch, I was changing his bedpan at 3 a.m. You brainwashed yourself." She raised her hand. I didn't flinch. She didn't strike. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "I'll ruin you. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did." "What I did?" I said calmly. "I stood up. That's what I did. Every day for 8 years. Where were you?" She had no answer. Victoria approached, hesitant, broken. "Anna, can we talk alone?" I looked at her. Red-rimmed eyes, smudged mascara. For the first time in 8 years, she looked like a real person. We walked into an empty office. "I didn't know," Victoria said, "about the money, about how bad things were. Mom told me Dad was fine, that you were overreacting, that he was just old and you were making a big deal out of nothing." "He begged you to visit," I said. "On your birthday, March 12th. He wanted to see you. You only sent a card." Victoria began to cry. "I know, I'm so sorry. I thought I had more time. You thought he'd always be there," I said. "But he's gone. And you weren't there when it mattered." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I am so, so sorry." I didn't comfort her. I didn't hug her. I just said, "Sorry doesn't make up for 8 years." "Then what do I do?" she asked. "Be honest with yourself. Be honest with everyone. Stop the performance and start being real." She nodded, wiping her tears. "Okay, I will." Back in the conference room, the notary arrived. Elizabeth Crawford, 22 years of experience. Professional, unshakable. She verified Dad's signature, the witnesses, and the date. I notarized Richard Barnes's will on March 15, 2024, at 10 a.m. in my office. He was sound of mind, coherent, and adamant about these terms. He asked me to read the entire document aloud twice to ensure accuracy. He understood every word. Strauss asked, "Was anyone else present?" "Mr. Morrison, the 3 witnesses, Dr. Chen, Mr. Barnes's accountant, and his neighbor, Mr. Green, all signed under oath." "Are you certain his cognitive capacity was normal?" "Mr. Strauss, I've been a notary for 22 years. I've notarized over 10,000 documents. If I had any doubt about Mr. Barnes's mental capacity, I would have refused. He was fully competent, without question." Morrison recalled Dr. Chen. "Dr. Chen, can you clarify the timeline of Mr. Barnes's cognitive decline?" "Of course. On March 10, 2024, I assessed Richard's cognitive function using the MMSE. He scored 28 out of 30, which is normal. His Parkinson's affected his motor skills. Tremors, rigidity, balance, but not his cognition. His cognitive decline didn't begin until August 2024, about 5 months after he signed the will. So, the September 2nd will is invalid. Richard lost cognitive capacity in mid-August. He could not have legally signed a will in September. During the recess, Strauss made 7 calls. I watched him through the glass. Each call was shorter. Each ended with him shaking his head. He was confirming facts he already knew. He had lost. Strauss walked toward Patricia. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw her face. The moment she realized it was over, he said something. She shook her head violently. He said something else. She pounded the table. Then, she went deathly still. Morrison returned to the hallway. "Mr. Strauss informs me he is withdrawing all challenges. The will is ironclad." I let out a long breath, one I'd been holding for 8 years. 3:32 p.m. We returned to the conference room. Patricia's makeup was ruined. Victoria's eyes were red. I was calm, steady, ready. Morrison sat. "Mr. Strauss, have you finished your verification?" Strauss stood. "The will dated March 15, 2024 is legally binding and incontestable. My client withdraws all challenges." Patricia whispered, "No." "Mrs. Barnes?" "No, I'm not withdrawing." Strauss looked at her coldly. "Mrs. Barnes, if you continue to challenge this, you will face charges of fraud, embezzlement, and elder abuse. The forensic accounting report is irrefutable. Notary fraud is documented. You won't just lose the case, you will go to prison. Accept the terms." Patricia said nothing, just stared at the table. Morrison addressed the room. "For the record, Richard Barnes's will dated March 15, 2024 is legally binding. Anna Barnes is the primary beneficiary of 60% of the estate, 40% of the company shares and voting rights, and sole ownership of the family brownstone. These proceedings are concluded." Morrison announced the formal distribution. Anna Marie Barnes inherits $5.2 million in liquid assets, 40% controlling interest in Barnes Medical Supplies, and sole ownership of the Montague Street brownstone, along with all personal effects. He looked at Patricia. "Patricia Allen Barnes inherits the Miami condo valued at $800,000 per the prenuptial agreement, with no further claim to the estate or business assets." He looked at Victoria. "Victoria Barnes Ashford inherits a $200,000 trust, payable at $50,000 annually for 4 years, contingent upon achieving financial independence." The room was silent. Then Morrison added, "And one final matter. Given the evidence of financial abuse, elder exploitation, and threats made in the hallway in my presence, I am filing for an emergency restraining order on behalf of Anna Barnes. Patricia Barnes is not to contact Anna Barnes or come within 500 feet of her. Effective immediately." Patricia stood up. "This is ridiculous." Morrison signaled the security guard. "Escort Mrs. Barnes out of the building." Patricia lunged for me. "You ruined everything, you—" The guard grabbed her arms. She screamed and struggled. Victoria stood crying, not knowing who to help. "Mom, please stop, please." Patricia was escorted out, screaming threats until the elevator doors closed. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Anna, I'm Sarah Chen from the New York Times. I attended your father's funeral. I'd like to speak with you about the probate case. Public records indicate fraud charges. Can we talk?" I checked the time. 4:17 p.m. I Googled Patricia Barnes. An article popped up. Published 4:17 p.m. The New York Times. Medical supply executive's widow charged with embezzlement and elder abuse after failed will contest. The story had spread. Public records, forensic reports, Patricia's name was on every financial news site by 5 p.m. I kept my phone on silent. I didn't need the validation of strangers. Morrison's phone rang. He listened, then hung up. That was David Wong, chairman of the board at Barnes Medical. "They're holding an emergency meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. With 40% of the shares and voting rights, you control the company now, Anna. They need to know your intentions." I looked at him. Patricia was acting CEO. "Yes, not anymore." Morrison smiled. "I'll notify the board." Victoria approached me cautiously, as if I might shatter. "Anna, I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Mom stole Dad's money. She lied to me. She told me you were the problem, and I actually believed her." "I know. What do I do now?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was 28. Her adult life had been a performance, the golden child, the success story. Now she had nothing but $200,000 and the brutal truth. "You have a choice," I said. "You can keep following Patricia and keep lying, or you can start over." "What if I start over?" "Then you'll finally find out who you are once you're off her script." Victoria nodded. She turned to Patricia, who was still screaming in the lobby, held by security. Victoria said, "Mom, did you really steal Dad's medical fund?" Patricia screamed, "It was our money. He was dying. If you leave me, you'll have nothing." Victoria looked at her, then at me, then back at Patricia. "Then I'll have nothing." She walked away. Victoria sat down, quiet, broken, but real. I sat across from her. "Victoria, Dad left you $200,000, but I'm adding another $300,000, a total of $500,000. She looked up, stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because Dad wanted you to have a chance, a real one. Not Patricia's version of success, but your own. But there are conditions." "What conditions?" "You have to get a job, A real one. Don't use Forbes connections. Don't use your Instagram influence. Don't hire PR. If you have to start at the bottom, you start at the bottom. You have to prove you can stand on your own. And until you figure out who you are without Patricia, stay away from her. Victoria stared at me. You're giving me $500,000 with strings attached. I'm giving you a chance. Take it or leave it. She nodded. I'll take it, and I'll prove I'm not like her. I handed her a check, signed right there, $500,000. This is your last safety net, I said. Use it wisely. She took the check, crying. Thank you, I don't deserve this. No, you don't, I said. But Dad still loved you, so I will too. Tuesday, 9 a.m., Barnes Medical Boardroom, 12th floor. 8 board members, 2 alternates. I sat at the head of the table. David Wong called the meeting to order. Motion to immediately remove Patricia Barnes from all positions at Barnes Medical Supplies, including acting CEO. All in favor? 6 hands went up. 2 abstentions. Patricia's old allies. Motion passes 6-2. Next, per Richard Barnes's will, motion to appoint Anna Barnes to the board of directors with 40% voting shares. All in favor? 8 hands went up, including the 2 who had abstained. Motion passes 8-0. Welcome to the board, Anna. Patricia wasn't there. She'd fled to Miami. The $800,000 condo was all she had left. By Wednesday morning, the story was everywhere. Forbes pulled Victoria's 30 Under 30 feature. Her PR firm terminated her contract. Her Instagram followers dropped from 180,000 to 62,000 in 48 hours. The comments on her last post were, "Where were you when your dad was dying?" Fake, performative, pathetic. You only cared about his money. She deleted the app and texted me, "Is this how it feels, like an invisible person?" I replied, "No, this is how it feels to be a real person." The brownstone looked different now. I'd redecorated it, not to erase Dad, but to honor him. His study was untouched, his books, his chair, his reading glasses on the side table. But the basement, that 180-square-foot prison where I'd lived for 8 years, was now something else. It was the Caregiver Support Center. Free resources, support groups, respite care referrals, educational materials for families dealing with Parkinson's, everything I'd needed but couldn't find. We opened in March, 6 months after the will reading. On opening day, 200 people applied for services. People just like me, invisible caregivers who had sacrificed everything and had nothing to show for it but grief. Now they had a place, a voice, a witness. One Tuesday morning, Victoria knocked on my door. No makeup, no designer bag, just Victoria in jeans, a sweater, and sneakers. "Hi," she said. "Hi, can I come in?" I moved aside. She walked in, looking around. "You changed it." "Yeah. It's beautiful." We sat in the living room, the room Patricia never let me use. The room she said was for guests. "I got a job," Victoria said. "Where?" "Marketing coordinator for a nonprofit, $45,000 a year." I blinked. "That's a long way down from 180,000. "I know, it's humbling, exhausting, but real." "How does it feel?" She smiled, a real smile. "Scary, but good." We sat in quiet for a while. A comfortable quiet, the kind you can only have with someone else when you finally stop performing. Then she said, "I didn't deserve his love, but you did. And you gave it to me anyway." I didn't forgive her that day, but I allowed her to earn it. I have Dad's letter framed in my office now. Page 47, hanging above my desk at the Barnes Foundation headquarters. "Anna, they will underestimate you, let them." As it turned out, he was right. Patricia underestimated me, thought I was weak, thought I'd accept that basement, that silence, that erased fate. Victoria underestimated me, thought I'd become irrelevant while she collected applause. The world underestimated me, just saw a 34-year-old woman with no career, no degree, no obvious value. They all handed their advantage to me. They just didn't know it. Those who underestimate you are handing you the element of surprise. And I, every second of every day, was using it. Patricia thought caregiving made me weak. She was wrong. It made me strong enough to survive her. Victoria thought success meant applause. She was wrong. Success means standing up when no one is watching. Dad's letter ended with this: "True value isn't measured by degrees or bank accounts. It's measured by the sacrifices you make when no one is watching. Love means standing up." He was right. I stood up for 2,847 nights. Not for the inheritance, not for validation, not for applause. I stood up because that's what love does. And in the end, that love saved me. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been the one standing up in silence while someone else took the applause, tell me your story in the comments. Because people like us, we don't need validation, but we deserve to be seen. If this story meant anything to you, please subscribe. Those who stand up deserve a voice. And I'm not finished telling their story.